Break the rules and add lens flare to your photograph to create a dreamy mood. There's a famous quote by Pablo Picasso that I reference frequently when I teach. Learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist, and I could not agree more. One of those rules we are initially taught in photography is to avoid lens flare and blown out highlights. Your challenge is to toss this rule out the window and use lens flare to create a dreamy or romantic mood in your images, because this is exactly what lens flare does. Shoot into the sun to create lens flare. Hold a piece of glass or plastic against your lens to simulate lens flare. Create an image that appears as if out of a dream. Let's take a look at how I completed this challenge. If you want to create lens flare in your photograph, what you need to do is you need to shoot into the sun. That sun needs to be coming into your lens. And then what you can do is you can frame up so that that sun is just barely outside of your frame or just in the edge of your frame, and it'll flare out and give you that beautiful look. And the reason we're told not to create lens flare is two reasons. One, sometimes it creates really bright, blown out highlights, but that might create a really dreamy mood. It might be exactly what we're looking for. And then the other reason that you're told to avoid lens flare is because what lens flare does is it puts light directly into the lens, it kicks it around, and it gives you low contrast, flat images. When I want to create lens flare, because of the mood it creates, because of how dreamy it is, I know that I can go into Lightroom, into the Develop module, and I can add contrast. I can create a black point and I can add clarity. And I can still have the mood I was going for. So that's exactly what we're going to do. One of the things that I'm careful to do as well is to remove the lens hood. The lens hood is actually preventing lens flare. It's blocking off light from hitting your lens. So if you want to create this effect, you're probably going to have to remove your lens hood. The next thing that I might do to augment this effect is I use what I call lens flare tools, which really are just random, somewhat translucent plastic things that I buy at a local craft shop. It might be AC Moore, it might be Michael's. And what this one is in particular is it is an acrylic ornament. Now what I can do is when I'm shooting into the sun, I can put it up against my lens, just in a corner, and it's going to catch some of that light, kick it into the lens, and give me that lens flare. Now, I can't tell you exactly what to buy, but go ahead, go there, buy a bunch of these inexpensive lens flare tools and try them out. Even on a slightly overcast day, you can still get a little bit of that lens flare effect when normally you're going to need a very bright and sunny day. If you're going to use a lens flare tool, you want to put it directly in front of your lens. The further out that you have this away from your lens, what's going to happen is you're going to start to see the edges. And no longer is it creating just a beautiful haze, but you'll actually have distracting elements. I recommend that you shoot at a minimum of 2.8, but ideally try to shoot wider, 1.8, 2.0. And this is going to give you the best results if you're trying one of these lens flare tools. For this shot, I know I'm shooting backlit, and I know that there's not really much contrast or direction of light to her face. So I'm going to add a reflector, just to add a little bit better direction, a little bit better contrast. We're going to hold it above her head, so that it creates a downward angle of light. I don't want to have that main source of light beneath her chin, because then it's going to put the highlights underneath her chin and underneath her cheeks. So we're going to be careful to have a flattering direction of light. When I want to create lens flare, and when I'm shooting in a backlit situation where I really want that beautiful haze, I want to have my background really out of focus. So I'm going to select wide aperture lenses. Maybe a 2.8, or ideally even wider, a 1.8, or in this case, I'm going to be shooting with a Canon 5D Mark III and a Canon 50mm 1.2 and a Canon 85mm 1.2. This is going to allow me to have crisp focus on the face, but have really narrow depth of field and allow even more of that lens flare to bounce around in my photograph. Okay, now let's take a look at some of the images we just created in Adobe Lightroom CC. One of the benefits of creating lens flare in camera is you get this really beautiful and airy and dreamy effect. But this also causes you some problems. And as you look at the histogram here, you can tell that we really don't have a black point. There's not enough contrast. There's not really any black points in the photograph. So there are usually some things I can do to help this, but I'd love to share with you a brand new tool that's in the most recent update of Adobe Lightroom CC 2015. If you go to the Develop module of Adobe Lightroom CC and scroll down to the bottom, where you have the effects panel, you'll see a new tool called dehaze. Now this is great for getting rid of a haze in your photographs, perhaps on a foggy day, or in an instance like this where you have a bit of lens flare. Watch the improvement to the contrast and the overall appearance of the photograph when I add a little bit of this dehaze filter. All of a sudden, I still have that lens flare, I still have that glow, but I've drastically improved that contrast to the photograph. And if I hit the shortcut Y, you can see the before and after side by side. Of course, I can go back up to the overall basic module, add a black point in a little bit more. I can also go ahead and add some clarity, and all of a sudden, I've transformed my photograph. So I still have that dreamy lens flare, but I don't have the lack of contrast and the overall muddiness that I had in the original photographs. So make sure you check out the new dehaze control in Lightroom CC 2015. Okay, so we've covered the essentials of what we need to create lens flare in camera and also what we need to do in post-processing. So let's make some pretty photos.